Hi, my name is Caleb, and this is my second video. I'm just talking about questions on my pursuit, on my journey to learning what it means to live a good life, to figuring out big questions about life, like what is meaningful to me, what is my purpose, like what is my core identity, and all these kinds of questions I'm trying to understand through the study of philosophy. So for some context, I've studied philosophy in college, formally, but also I've been studying it for a long time. I'm on the path to becoming a psychiatrist, and I'm very interested in these bigger questions in life, mainly as a personal pursuit. But I thought that if other people want to see like kind of what I'm thinking through, and if it could help anyone else, or maybe like my future children, that would be really cool. So what I'm doing right now, this larger project, is it's going through a history of Western philosophy by Bertrand Russell. It's like a very long book about that goes through a lot of prominent philosophers and motivates it with some history and some relevant knowledge about the kinds of environments that existed in the world and that led to certain types of philosophies being formalized. And what I'm doing differently is like I'm writing my notes in like sort of the margin based on my own research and I've read the book before, but it was more cursory. But now I'm doing a more like thorough, trying to get an understanding of the question, the specific question that I talked about, the big questions in life that I mentioned, and how different philosophers answer those questions, and whether it's compelling or not. What do I think I want to actually accept into my own life? How is it sort of relevant in today's modern milieu? And yeah, this is a personal journey. So the purpose of this video today is really to discuss this thing, the distinction. Well, what falls under the purview of philosophy, and why is philosophy important? So those are the main like questions that I'm asking, and I'm going through some of what I've learned through like introductory philosophy courses, but also my reading of different types of categorizations of what philosophy constitutes, but keeping that scaffold of Russell's A History of Western Philosophy. In the introduction, I'm going to go through kind of how he makes the distinction. So I think people often think that philosophy is devoid of any sort of like religion or topics of religion, but a lot of big time philosophers were religious. That's just like it's like a fact in history. And like Bertrand Russell, he was one of the most prominent philosophers, but he was atheist. So I mean, like his book is inherently biased towards against religion. But he even acknowledges, he says that in order to understand philosophy, you need to understand that it's motivated on one hand by this inherently religious idea, like the normative realm. So that's like in the realm of ethics, like how do we treat other people, and that he describes as a certain type of knowledge that's distinct from scientific knowledge. So how is it distinct? Because it's knowledge that's been handed to man, and it's like it's more of a it's not something that you could reason through like you can reason through like a scientific method by doing experiments in the world and coming up with theories, right? But you can't really verify or even check the you can't have it's unascertainable is the way he puts it, the realm of religion, because it's like the Bible has the 10 commandments that it's just this is how you should live your life in part, like these are some laws that generally lead to a good life, like loving your neighbors, etc. And it speaks to core questions about like, yeah, how do we navigate this life? On the other hand, he talks about how philosophy also covers the realm of scientific methods, and like as someone who's like most of my career is based off of like science and the study of like the basic sciences. For pre-med, you had to do like physics, organic chemistry, like all that biology, and still a lot of modern medicine is based on scientific foundation. But yeah, so he says that somewhere in like this type of knowledge is distinct because you could use your faculties of reason to and experiments in the world to figure out whether this is true or not. But it has nothing to say about how you should live your life. It's just unveiling the universal laws of the physical world. And that's what its purpose is. They have different purposes. They have different means of obtaining these knowledge, this type of knowledge too. So that sets the groundwork for his definition of philosophy, which is philosophy is like a no man's land. He calls it a no man's land between these two forms of knowledge: religion on one hand, and then that is inherently about like ethics, and then science, which is about like the scientific method, predictable, reliable, tells you about this like universal laws of the world, physical world. And so he talks about how like, I guess, why would you want to learn what's in between, right? Especially when these questions, he calls them insoluble because they're hard to answer, these questions. But he says that he puts it this way. He says they're the most interesting questions that we could ask ourselves. Questions of greatest interest to speculative minds that are outside the purview of science, but with the confident but which the confident answers of theologians are not convincing enough. So some of the he gives an exhaustive number of like question examples of like the sort of questions that arise from the philosophical milieu, but the ones that I selected, I think, are very interesting. I thought, to me at least, this is there a way of living that is noble and another that's base? Or are all ways of living futile? Is there a way to be noble? And what does that look like, if so? And how do we achieve that? Are humans what they seem to an astronomer, a tiny lump of impure carbon and water impotently crawling on a small and insignificant planet? Or is he what appears to Hamlet? Can he be both at once? Is the universe divided into mind and matter? If so, what is mind and what is matter? Does the universe have any unity or purpose? Is there an end towards which it's evolving? And these are the questions that I found, they are compelling. And this is within the purview of philosophy, this no man's land between religion and science. So if these like interesting questions are not enough, he says that the two most like the reason why you would want to grapple with these questions that have insoluble answers, he says, is because of two reasons for him. He says one is to understand an era or a nation. You need to understand the philosophy because a person's philosophy in life, it determines and informs how they act in the world, and they're based on theories of the world and human life, and that what is good, what is evil, and these questions are by their very nature insoluble. So you, like, in order to understand big picture, like the time, what like a nation stood for, what like understand an era and like how different, like how we got to where we are today, it's important to understand the philosophy that then informs the actions of people, and those actions determine history. So the second reason, it's more personal to him. And if you don't know much about Russell's life, he had a pretty tragic childhood where his mom and his dad died very early on. He moved in with his grandpa, and he died as well. And then his sister died as well, his older sister. And so his early childhood was marked by a lot of death and like sorrow and challenges, just like a lot of adversity. And he was suicidal pretty early on in his adolescence. So I think this second point for why he thinks he finds philosophy compelling is informed by that his life. And it says it's to reckon with the terror of cosmic loneliness, to live without certainty and at the same time without being paralyzed by hesitation. And the second part, it's kind of like intimation of Kierkegaard, which I hope to discuss later on in a subsequent video. But in regards to the first point about an era or nation, it's interesting because he points out that people have their philosophies on life, their principles, their values. It's informed a lot of times by their environment, their circumstances in life. Like for him, it was like the death and tragedies in his life. It like affected how he thinks and his outlook on life. But also it goes the other way around, where a person could have a very strong sense of what a society should look like, and they can affect and implement that ideal version of what the society should be, and that affects the environment and circumstances that other people, the world that other people live in. So it's this reciprocal relationship, and I'm going to be like, it's interesting because so throughout the book he's going to like Russell, he's going to kind of try to understand from that lens, what is like circumstances that affects the people, or what is the people, like the philosophers, that affect their outer environment, and how does that play out. Okay, and he also discusses shortly in like the, just for the sake of completeness, like this interesting idea of social cohesion throughout history. So like if you think of the ancient Greeks, like if you ever read the Republic by Plato, he talks about Socrates and Socrates' conception of a just society. It's like a perfect society that is completely just. And he talks about like the different layers of the society, the hierarchy, and then in that description, you get the sense that these people in their time really cared about the city-state, so the state as a whole. They had great fidelity and patriotism for their city-state. They would do and kind of direct their lives based on that. But then you have, over time, this dynamic, the social cohesion, it starts to be disrupted by different types of things. Like, for example, with Christianity, it made it more of a relationship between an individual and God, and there's less fidelity to the city-state or your nation, and it's more of I'm focusing on my relationship with God and doing right by God, and following those precepts and principles in life. So then it individualizes the social cohesion. Religion, it also has a way of creating cohesion, but in terms of to the state and in the political realm, there's less fidelity, right? There's all these complex dynamics, and then he wants to identify that throughout history, because that does inform a lot of the philosophy as well. So there's a lot of things going on, but he has these lens for these certain themes throughout history. And for me, as I'm reading it, any of these philosophies, any of the prominent people I discuss, or through the reading of the text, I'm going to be focusing my lens on looking at what do these philosophies have to say about how to live a good life, what is worth pursuing, what should be valuable, should be virtuous in my life. And I'm going to be kind of like trying to, in real time, trying to understand like what is good, and discerning between good and bad, and what I would find compelling or not. And how I could integrate that sort of in our modern day, because times are very different today than it was back then. So, like, I guess if we're thinking about these big questions that I'm very interested in, it really, it's interesting to me because it cuts to the matters that I think people really do care about. You often could hear about like people thinking, if I'm on my deathbed, what would I have wanted to do differently? Spend more time with family is a common answer, but these are just values that come up, and that it's better to grapple with when you're younger, or like any time in your life. Actually, it's important, these big questions that we never teach really in school, to think for yourself, like what do I want to value in my life? Is it family, relationships? What do I want to pursue? Is it money? Is it power, status? Who's the person I kind of want to become, and how do I get there? So that's the sort of like goal for these videos. And then it's for me, philosophy is important insofar as it answers those questions, practically speaking. And I don't know if I discussed this, but so Bertrand Russell, he talks about how like there's this, he creates a dichotomy. He says that there's the scientific realm, and then there's the ethical realm. And I think for me, the scientific realm, like he mentions, it doesn't really have much to say about how you should live your life, how you should organize your life, what you should pursue. But it is a powerful instrument with high predictive power, and utility. So it's a means to an end, a very potent one, and that fits into the picture of the ethical realm of values, because people use tools to achieve what they value in life. If you think of money as an analogy, it's a tool that you could use to achieve a certain value. So it really matters what how you think about values, and how we like investigate how our actions in our lives reflect a certain thing that we value. Do we value money? Do we do everything to like do really well in our job so that we could get more money? Or do we care about what other people think? Is that what we value? Is that worth valuing? Like, these are very important, because these are the ends we're going towards through our actions, like whether we are conscious of it or not. But the realm of science, it doesn't have anything to say about like how we should live our lives. Should we just survive and reproduce? Like, if we observe animals, I guess, is that like, but aren't humans different? Like, we're aware of our own consciousness, that we exist in this world. We're just kind of thrown into this world and asked to live without like a prescribed purpose. Like, aren't we different knowing our own status, like in relation to nature and the world, how delicate we are? When you look at the grand scheme of things, like we could be destroyed by a natural disaster or whatnot. But these are the sorts of things I'll be thinking through, and I'll be trying to make it as practical as possible. Okay, I'm just looking through. I have I just to be organized, I wrote out exactly what I want to talk about, the big points, and yeah. So I think I hit most of the points that I want to talk about, but yeah, I find that this pursuit in itself is very fulfilling. So if I decided to record it so that if other people are interested, they could learn from it potentially, or I don't know. It's just kind of like an experiment of my own. I've been wanting to do it for a really long time. Really motivated starting in college with when I first read about Descartes' meditations, where he does this thought experiment where he tries to go through this negative process of carving out like his implicit biases and the values that he kind of just absorbed like growing up wherever he grew up in the world. And then once you get down to like your core beliefs, like starting to this positive process of filling it in with things that you find good, things that you find truthful, that honest, like the sort of virtues that in ways of living and philosophies that you want to shape your life. And that is yeah, that's everything. I had to record this like the second time because I didn't realize I wasn't recording, but yeah, it's worth it, and hope you stay tuned for the next one.